Hello, welcome to my first kind of video. I'm Gina, if that wasn't obvious, and this video, as you can tell by the title, is going to be all about how I got into USC and other schools. And USC is where I attend now, from home. I'm going to be talking about my stats in high school, my extracurriculars. I'll read my essays just for the USC application, though I'm not going to be reading supplements for all the other colleges. And then I'm also going to give some advice, some general advice for each of those things and the college application process as a whole. I have all this written out on my iPad just to give me a guide. Alright, so the first thing, a little bit about myself. As you already know, I'm going to USC, that's the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. I was accepted for journalism, but I am actually studying journalism and Russian. I'm a double major. Other schools that I was accepted to are Northwestern, George Washington, Boston University, Northeastern, and the in-state schools. I was waitlisted at New York University and Harvard, and then I was rejected from Stanford. Just to give you a gauge for where my stats might compare to you or where you live, I am from Mississippi. And so our education system is not as great as a lot of other states. I also went to 2 different high schools. My first 2 years of high school, freshman and sophomore year, I went to a local high school here, just a local public school. For my junior and senior year, I attended a STEM boarding school whose academic curriculum is a lot more rigorous than the traditional public schools. So I considered myself above average at my old high school and either average or below average at the STEM school that I graduated from. Okay, so let's jump right into stat. First off is the ACT. For those who don't know, the ACT is a national standardized test which covers English, math, reading, science, and writing. It's used mostly for college applications and yeah, I honestly don't know what else it's used for. I took it 5 times total, and that does not include the time I took it in 7th grade through the Duke Tip program. My highest composite score that I actually got was 31, and for reference, USC's average is 30 to 34. I don't know the average for the other schools I applied to. My super score, which is when they take the highest score of each category and combine it that way, my super score is 33. My English was a 35, my math is a 30, my reading is a 30, and my science is a 35. My writing is a 7. I took this once sophomore year in case college applications would need it, but I really didn't want to take it. And I scored a 7 when the range was 2 to 12. That may have changed now. The last 2 tests that I took, the composite was both 31, but it had different sub-scores, and those 2 are the only 2 that I sent to USC. As for SAT, I never took it. I took the PSAT sophomore year and again junior year, and the PSAT is what qualifies you for national merit, semifinalists, and finalists, which I didn't receive. It basically opens up doors for more scholarship opportunities. Yeah, I just never wanted to take it. I didn't feel a need if the schools I was applying to didn't require it, and I also was a better ACT taker. Then again, I also based my judgment of the SAT based off the PSAT, which I've heard from some peers that it's really not the same, but I don't know. I didn't take it. I'm alive. We're good. And that does not mean I'm recommending not to take it. You just gotta do your own research and base it off what you want. And I didn't want to take it. So on to my GPA. I graduated with a 3.9 unweighted out of a 4.0 scale. For freshman and sophomore year, I was top of my class, but at the high school I graduated from, we don't do class rankings and we also don't do weighted GPAs, which is why 3.9 is all I know. And for reference, USC's average is 3.7 out of 4.0. And the classes that I took, I personally don't care to go through each specific class. I'm just gonna have them listed out on the screen because it's different requirements for every school district and every state, but I will cover accelerated classes and AP classes that I took. So freshman year, I took 3 accelerated classes and 1 AP class. It was AP World History. I took the test. I scored a 2 and I didn't send it anywhere. Sophomore year, I took 3 accelerated classes. Junior year, I took 6 accelerated classes, 2 university classes, and 2 AP classes. So at the STEM school I was talking about, all of our classes are considered accelerated or honors. So even though they're listed in a transcript as regular, when we send it off, it's recognized as accelerated. The two AP classes I took were AP Chemistry and AP Biology. I didn't take either test. For senior year, I took 8 accelerated classes, 2 university classes, and 2 AP classes. I'm tripping. It was 3 AP classes senior year. It was AP Stats 1, AP Stats 2, and AP Physics. So for some general advice on the stats portion, going into college applications, it literally does not matter as much as you think it does. Majority of colleges look for other aspects, like what you did in your free time, your extracurricular, rather than your grades, and because numbers don't define you, and colleges recognize that for the most part, I think. I hope. I'm not saying don't get good grades, don't worry about it, but you should do the best you can, and then the writing and your extracurriculars will bring out who you really are, and that's what college is like for. Don't stress about not having a lot of APs. I know a lot of different schools offer a lot more AP classes and advanced classes, so I know people who take 20 AP classes in their entire year, but like I didn't take that many. And while it's good to push yourselves to take the most advanced things, from my experience, I didn't do that in all the subjects because I simply wasn't interested. I took the minimum in some of them, especially the STEM classes, simply because I didn't like it and I didn't want to do more. I focused more in my interests, which is our humanities and social sciences. Okay, so the next portion of college applications are activities and extracurriculars. In the Common App, there's a section for activities and it allows you to list up to 10, and so I'll be going through the 10 that I put for that. So it asked you to tell what the activity was, a position if you had it, I think the name of the organization if it was affiliated with one. I was on my school newspaper, and I was in this for the 2 years I was at this school. The little description that I put for it was, this award-winning student-run online newspaper meets weekly to create a news budget, assign articles and photos, and publish a new edition. Looking back, I could have written that a lot better to show a little bit more about my involvement in it, not necessarily what it does. The second one I put was the Al Newharth Free Spirit in Journalism Conference. This is essentially a week-long conference in Washington, D.C. that you can apply to and attend the summer between your junior and senior year. They take one representative from each state in Washington, D.C. and you come together, you hear from a lot of speakers, you hear from each other, and you learn a lot about journalism in the professional world. It's really great for connections and really great if you're at all interested in journalism, film, or anything like that, because I know a lot of my peers from that conference. Not all of them are doing journalism. I know some of them simply had an interest in journalism and worked on their staff newspaper. So for this, I marked junior year because that's all I had. And my description was, this conference encourages students to pursue journalism careers and to promote the role of the First Amendment as a cornerstone for democracy. For the third activity, I put Asian Students Association. I was the president at the time, and I did this for both years, junior and senior year. And the description I put was, ASA focuses on spreading cultural awareness throughout local communities by hosting events and activities for people to explore and learn. And the fourth activity I put was the International Cultural Festival. It's an event that we hosted through ASA. And my junior year, I was one of the co-founders with this with a group of 5 or 6, and in my senior year, I was a co-director. I did this for 2 years, junior and senior year. However, senior year, it did get canceled because of COVID. And for the description, I wrote, this annual event invites people of all ages from the Northeast Mississippi region and beyond to get a taste of various cultures across the globe. The fifth activity I wrote was the American Red Cross Blood Drive. I was the director of this for 2 years, freshman and sophomore year. And my description for it is, as a community-wide community service event, we recruit volunteers and donors to help give back, winning a state-level award for community service. And it did. Both years. The sixth item I put was painting, photography, and calligraphy as a hobby. I listed all 4 years for that, and my description was, for at least 8 years, I have been self-teaching myself various forms of art, occasionally submitting works to contests and creating gifts for others. My seventh activity is student council, and I was class president. I marked that for freshman and sophomore year. Although I was involved in their student government junior year, I was only class vice president, so I didn't feel it was honest to reflect that in junior year as well, though I don't really know how to go about that. So I left it at 2 just to be safe. And my description for that was, the executive board and council work together to plan community service events, voice student body concerns, and organize student activities. My eighth activity was math outreach. I did this for 2 years, junior and senior year. And my description for that is, students create math-based learning projects and problems for local elementary, middle, and high school students by hosting contests and competitions. My ninth item is Beta Club, and I was class representative. I did this for 3 years, freshman through junior year, and my description is, Officers work to seek out and organize community service activities and make arrangements for club participation in the State Beta Convention. And my final activity listed is Science Olympiad. I was vice president, and I did this for freshman and sophomore year. My description for this is a team that practices throughout the school year for regional and state competitions and has placed and won in many categories at both levels. So, some advice I have for this section. First off, don't leave anything blank. They give you 10 spaces to show a little bit more who you are. You need to take up all 10 of those spaces. Because trust me, there's more to you than your stats and your essays. This is the place to show it. I did clubs, I did hobbies, I did extra programs that I did outside of school, community service. If you work, this is where you would put it too. It shows a lot of responsibility. Balancing work and school is not easy. And notice some of the clubs are geared towards career related. They're related to my major, which is journalism, while some of them are STEM, which I have no interest in pursuing, and there are some of them that show my experience as a leader and volunteer hours. In each of these categories that I actually listed, there's more behind the story. For example, my school newspaper, I wasn't just editor-in-chief, I was photography editor at one point, but I chose what was most important for the space being. You gotta learn to cut and pick what's best and decide what's most important to you and what best represents you. And there were also additional things I was involved in that may have been perceived better on my application that I actually didn't include because one, I didn't have space for, or two, they actually happened during senior year. You can only do what you can, right? And one final thing about the hobbies, I actually almost left out, like the painting, photography, and calligraphy, because whenever I was first approaching this, I was like, they need to see who I am as a leader, my extracurriculars, what I did outside of school, etc. But I didn't think to put a hobby. I was so worried about how they'd see me as a student that I didn't think about art, which is a vital part of who I am. I didn't realize this until a friend actually reviewed my application for me, and she was like, Gina, who are you without art? Who are you without painting? And that's kind of when it hit me. I was like, that's a huge part of who I am. I need to include this. It helps them learn more about me, which is good. That's what you want. Okay, so the next section I have is essays. The first thing is the Common App essay. I believe they give you like many different prompts. I don't know how many. They give you a lot of different prompts to choose from, or you can have like an other where you write about something else that you want. So the prompt I chose is, some students have a background, interest, or talent that is so meaningful that they believe the application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. So I will now read my Common App essay. If you're not interested in hearing, you can just skip. But basically I wrote about my experience and what I learned from attending a Trump rally as a reporter my junior year. We've done great, but as you know, the fake news back there didn't like to talk too much about it. Head turns, boos, and hisses followed the president's words. The looks I received from the crowd simply for being in the press box were colder than the air that bitter November evening. I never felt so small and inferior than in that moment, but it forced me to face a certain reality. Many people have lost trust and confidence in the power of the press. When Air Force One came to a halt on the runway hours before, I could sense the anticipation and excitement in the air. The sun beamed across the sea of Mississippians who came wearing their scarlet caps. Maybe it was a surreal feeling I had sitting between reporters from national news stations, CBS and NBC. Maybe it was watching the story unfold right in front of my eyes instead of through a screen. Or maybe it was when he called the press, called me, fake news. It was in that moment when I realized how much I wanted to help rebuild the press's reputation. What started out as an extracurricular ended up opening a passion of mine I didn't know existed. Between hands-on experiences like the rally and summer programs and conferences dedicated to creating connections between student journalists, I've learned how important the role of the press is. Journalism is more than politics and national news. It's about telling stories that matter. Stories that could affect lives, yet they may never be shared with the world without this outlet. Growing up, my older brother had always set a high standard to be met. Oh, I actually wrote to be meet. I didn't proofread this one enough. He was always one step ahead of the crowd, made better grades, and went on to study computer science. And my interest in the arts and humanities was nothing next to that. I felt as if my voice was buried under his success. I felt that my story had gone untold. After coming to the Mississippi School for Mathematics and Science, though, I met people of all backgrounds who were open to telling their stories and listening to mine. These were stories of living in a hotel room for the entirety of their childhood and of traveling across the world to learn about agricultural sciences. These stories broadened my perspective, allowing me to build relationships. We became invested in each other. Some stories, I thought, deserved to be heard by more than just me. In using the platform I had through the paper, I set a goal to retell these stories and capture the bigger picture of them. Why would you go into journalism? It's a dying field, people would say, berating me and claiming that the rise of the internet and fake news has put the profession 6 feet under, with barely a salary to survive. To that, I say journalism is not. But it's up to my generation and me to decide how we'll continue telling stories and continue captivating readers in a way that inspires them to want more. So intentionally, my build-up was telling the story and saying what I learned from it. You need to have structure to it, and you need to have like a why, a purpose. You know, you gotta tell what you learned from it, how you changed from it, and how it affects you now. Yeah, so for this essay, I had about 6 different people edit it. If nothing else, this is the essay that needs to be edited, like by peers, by teachers, somebody, because this is the one that's sent to all your schools if you apply through the Common App. I did not apply through any other application, so I don't know how those work. And when I first started writing my Common App essay, I wrote this in August, like mid-August, or like started in mid-August anyways. It had a lot of refining and editing done by the end of the semester, by the time I submitted everything. But I did start with about 3 different topics. I actually wrote 3 separate essays about 3 completely different things. And ultimately, I decided this was a topic I was going to go with. And it's that same point I said earlier. The reason I chose this over the other 2 were after writing it, I reflected and realized there was no closure to the other stories. I hadn't learned from it. I hadn't grown from it yet. I was still struggling through it, which you don't want to just throw a sob story at them. Struggles in your life are a good place to start as long as you grew from it, you know? I hope that makes sense. Yeah, one of my drafts was really emotional to write, but it hurt more to realize that there wasn't an ending to it yet, so there was no way I could write that. Alright, so for USC, we had 2 supplemental essays, and I will read those as well. So, again, skip this if you want. The first prompt is as follows. USC faculty places an emphasis on interdisciplinary academic opportunities. Describe something outside of your intended academic focus about which you are interested in learning. So I wrote, gender studies examines how gender shapes our identities, our social interactions, and our world. This is an area of study that I've never given a thought to study before, but after speaking about it with someone I had just met on a trip to Washington, D.C., I realized how important a topic like this is. Learning about it would allow people to make connections between power relations and social constructions of gender, race, class, sexuality, and so much more through various perspectives. In fact, some of the most important issues today revolve around being a man, a woman, or a non-binary person. Becoming more aware of these things could help me obtain the necessary tools to promote equity across social, political, and economic spheres, as well as address common experiences, such as being differently abled or being shaped by a different country or culture. Learning more about these ideas would open up a whole new perspective for me. It's really weird going back and reading all of these because I feel like I was such a different person a year ago. I'm filming this pretty late. It's freaking September. It's been over a year since I've written some of these. The second prompt for USC was, describe how you plan to pursue your academic interests and why you want to explore them at USC specifically. Please feel free to address your first and second choice major selection. And I wrote, when I first became interested in journalism, I feared that by the time I entered the field, it would have changed drastically and lost value, and that I would question whether or not it was worth it. However, since then, I have gained experiences that have shown me that is not the case. The platform for news is changing, and professors at the University of Southern California, like Amara Aguilar and Laura Davis, knows this. Their work in digital and emerging media are the kind of journalism I hope to pursue at USC. The hands-on experiences and opportunities are what I hope to help me develop critical thinking, solid writing, and good news judgment. Although I gained an interest for journalism only within the last few years, my passion for how the world is intertwined has always stood strong. Learning about different cultures and people across the world, as well as how we have evolved and how it continues to affect us every day, is something I've always wanted to do. USC offers various programs, including the internship program and study abroad, that will help me achieve these goals. These programs can help me bridge my interest in journalism to international relations and explore potential careers. Additionally, at USC, so many students pursue their diverse interests and passion, and they all excel equally. Being in the interdisciplinary environment would allow me to grow in more ways than just academically. It would expose me to so many different people and perspectives. So for these two supplements, actually no one edited it. I kept my college application process, for the most part, pretty private. It's already hard being in a competitive environment. I was a little too self-conscious of my work to risk comparison with my peers. So other than the Common App essay, I went through the college application alone, basically. But to be honest, I did not put as much effort and thought into it as I should have. Yeah. Aside, I made it. For example, like I read one of my NYU supplements after I submitted it, and there's a big typo. Aside, it's okay. It wasn't meant to be there anyways. And additionally, as you may have noticed in one of my supplements, I named certain programs and I named certain professors and what they do. Because I've heard that it's good to do research on the school and make those specific references because it shows that you took extra time to go and do that research, so you know a little bit more. But to be honest, that advice is kind of like fake and ingenuine. Anyone can do research. Anyone can just look up a name real quick and slap it on. But I did do it anyways, but I wasn't as genuine about it. I wasn't as super passionate about it as it may have seemed. I did do the research in the moment when I was writing it and kind of slapped it on, although I was genuinely interested in that. If I had done the research outside of college applications, I still would have found interest in it, but in all honesty, I didn't do the research beforehand. Okay, so in addition to the supplements and the essay, USC also asks 10 short answer questions. USC is kind of known for this section. It's really fun, and people tend to think too hard about it, but I don't recommend thinking too hard about it. It's just to get to know you a little more. Fun facts like what's your favorite snack, favorite movie, etc. And looking back at these answers, I definitely didn't care. I cared some, and a lot of them are genuine, but some of these things, I should have thought a little more about it. Either that, or I'm just not the same person as I was a year ago. Yeah. And for these short answers, even though they are short, I do recommend explaining them a little bit if you have the space. I don't know, applications might look different in the future, or they may have looked different in the past already. You could explain it a little more, just a short sentence. Okay, and there's also another portion on the Common App. It's called just additional information. A lot of my peers wrote an additional essay about a different aspect of themselves and put it here, but I did not do that. I actually used this section to explain that even though my transcript and my classes reflect a lot of AP classes, I had only ever taken one class and I didn't even report it. And I explained that it's because I didn't want to take on the financial burden of having to pay for all those tests. That's why I don't have scores for any of them, except world history. So yes, you can go to a great school without AP scores. So my overall advice for the writing supplement section, any type of writing you do for this, is 1, get as close to the max limit as possible. For example, if the max is 600, write between 550 and 600. Or even push it further, 590 and 600. Every word matters. Every space you're given matters. Because we all know through this application process, they already don't know you for who you actually are through just some writing, some scores, and some extracurriculars. There's more to you. That's not who you are. And so anytime they give you that space, you gotta take that chance and to show them. Which is why editing is so vital in the writing process. Pick the best 600 words you can give them, I'll be honest, I didn't do this in all my supplements. Most of them I did reach within 10 to 5 words of the max limit. A lot of them I met the max. If it asked for 600, I gave 600, etc. But there were some times, I'll be honest, I was a little more lazy, which I probably shouldn't have been, but I was, and I was even up to 100 words under the max, which again, it's not a super big deal, but I'm just saying you're kind of missing out on 100 words of space. You could show a little more about who you are. That's just my take on it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I had 3 points out, but I really just summed it all into one. Okay, and then next is recommendation letters. Most schools will require 2 to 3 recommendation letters from a parent, a mentor of some kind, etc. So I had 3 total, because some of my schools requested 2 and some of my schools requested 3. All 3 of these people know me as a student inside the classroom, but they also know me outside the classroom. I'm involved in some of the clubs and organizations that they advise, and I also took some of their classes. So they get to see me more than just, oh, she's a good student, or oh, she's a good leader. you want people who can see multiple sides of who you are. When asking these people for recommendation letters, ask them in person and ask them early. After you ask them in person and they say yes, you'll want to follow up with an email asking again, so they have like a written reminder about it. And when you email them, also attach your resume, because again, even though they might know you inside and outside the classroom, I'm sure there are more aspects of you they don't know, and some teachers will actually request it as well. But whether or not they requested it, I still sent them my resume. And a lot of people tell you throughout high school that you need to be getting to know your teachers outside of just the class time that you're delegated. You need to know a little more about them, show them a little bit more about you. Ultimately, this is why it's important to do that. You're gonna need recommendations, not just for college, but like for scholarships, for different programs you want to attend to, even before senior year. And for me, even when I got my first job, I turned to one of my teachers, one of these teachers, to be a reference. So get to know your teachers. Overall, my final advice for you as you're doing the college application process is that this video only shows you what one application looks like. I am by no means perfect. This is by no means a perfect application. There's no such thing as a perfect application. Everyone is different, and colleges all look for different things, and I just want you to know that you will end up where you belong. I can't emphasize that enough. I was so stressed going through this process and so scared that I wouldn't be good enough for this college or that college. I didn't get into my dream college, which was Stanford, but ultimately I'm at USC and I couldn't be happier. Now that I've reached this goal, I couldn't imagine myself even at the other schools I applied to, like looking back. So in the end, everything will work itself out. So you just have to trust in yourself and trust that you are doing the best you can. And that's all you can give. And a special shout out to all my MSMS babies watching this. You're doing amazing. That's it. That's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.